Hello everyone! As I'm sure many of you already know, they have recently added some new limited time missions called the Trial by Fire. And these missions require you to clear up to floor 3 of the Fire Affinity Tower to receive 20 Atelier Fest tickets and 300 gems. And this is obviously a lot of rewards, that's a lot of tickets, but it is quite difficult content. Now, the first few floors of each Affinity Tower aren't really too bad, so thankfully they're not having us go past floor 3, which is pretty fair. However, I know it's going to be very daunting for those of you without the strong 3-star fire characters such as Ryza and Mari. And so that's why I'm here with this guide to, show you how to get through these floors and clear them with a team that I am positive anyone can make. So yeah, hopefully this will work out for you. I was able to get through these floors pretty cleanly with this team. And I'm not going to show the actual battles in this video, but I will link them in the description. So if you want to see how those clears went, make sure to check those videos out as well. But for this video, I'm just going to go over the team, the gear, and the general strategy I used to get through the first 3 floors of Fire Tower with no 3-star units. So yes, you heard that right. I did not use a single 3-star unit when clearing the first 3 floors of the tower. And let me just find the team real quick. I believe it was 7. Yes. This is the team that I used. So we have Lent, Meru, who are both 2 stars, then Marion, who's a 1-star, and then Resna and Regina, which are both 3 units. And I used this exact team for all 3 floors. I also tried to keep my gear fairly minimal. I think most of it is very easily recreatable. However, you do still need good attacker gear. If you do not already have good attacker gear, you should probably not even think about attempting tower. And you really should try to make good attacker gear, either skill power 9 or skill power 10. If you can, ideally, you should spend all of your resources into doing that if you don't already have that gear. So yeah, let's just go through the team real quick. First up, we have Lent. Lent is a defender with a very strong kit for this. So we go look at his skills. And the main part of his kit that matters is after attacking, he gives all of your allies a buff that reduces the physical damage they receive by 15% for one attack. And this is super important for just keeping your party alive, because for these early floors in the Fire Tower, if you have a good amount of damage reduction, you're not taking unsustainable amounts of damage. So having Lent in your party means you can, take on these enemies for a long time without dying, which will be really helpful because our damage isn't that high between Resna and Regina. If you do have Ryza, your damage is going to be a lot better. But yeah, overall, for these strategies, I would not recommend replacing Lent with anyone. He is kind of the best defender for our purposes. And the gear that you want to give him is any gear with this trait, Enhanced Physical Magic Resistance up. And this will scale the buff effect from his skill 2. So you want this trait on every piece of gear. Other than that, it doesn't matter what the gear is. You can see he has supporter gear on, so it's not really doing anything. I went with level 4, level 4, level 5 on this trait because that's what I have. If you can get triple level 5, it'll be even safer. But that is basically what you want on Lent's gear, and the other trait doesn't matter. So very simple gear setup for Lent. And of course, for all characters, we do want them to be level 70 with maxed out EX boards, which should be fairly trivial. If you've been playing the game a long time, you should have enough Sacred Orbs to do this. Even if you have to reset some of the other characters in your box, don't worry about it. It's worth it, right? So just make sure you max all of your characters out to make it as smooth as possible. Next, we have Meru. She is the classic budget healer. She has area healing on her skill 2, and so yeah, area recovery. And sometimes her skill 1 can be helpful for damage as it boosts the target's damage received. You usually won't be using her burst if the burst lands on her because it doesn't heal, and she's strictly here for sustain on your team. So you really just want to keep everyone topped off with Meru. As far as her gear goes, She has all recovery boost in every slot, so level 5. If you make skill power gear with Quake crystals, you will just have this stuff incidentally. The actual bases, once again, don't really matter, just the traits. And the second trait doesn't really matter either, but if you have even better healing gear for her, then she will be able to heal more and it will be much easier to sustain. As far as replacing her goes, the new Shalistera is going to be better than her if you have her, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend replacing her with anyone else, even Liddy, as Liddy's healing is lower, and we don't really need the damage from Liddy here, we just need the sustain, and Meru is better in that regard. Next up we have Marion. She is here because we do need a breaker. That's pretty self-explanatory. She's a breaker. She sends things. As far as... Oh right, I should also go over Memoria as well. I forgot. Lent has the free Sophie Memoria. Everyone should have these. Meru has item charge that came from the Memoria event, so that's fine. And yeah, Marion. Marion's gear is very simple. It's just physical stun damage 5 on breaker bases. So steel bow, hard coat, bell of disruption. You don't need much better than this, but it does help, especially for floor 3, if you can have better stun gear. I just tried to keep it as minimal as possible. But if you do have better stun gear, it does help for sure. As the Memoria, I also gave her the free Breaker Memoria while equipped to a Breaker. Boost stun damage for all allies by 7%. Another good Memoria for some of the floors, for like floor 1, can be this one, where it boosts stun damage by 12% when attacking a boss, so not bad there. Next up, we have Resna, and Resna is going to be our main damage dealer for the entire thing, because she is the only fire attacker other than Ryza and Wilbel, who are both from Gacha. So for floor 3, if you have Ryza, Ryza will be better than Resna, but Resna is still good enough. And Resna's gear is going to be a bit higher quality than everyone else, where she has a skill power 9 magic attacker weapon, the effect doesn't matter, and then skill power 9 for the armor and accessory as well. Because the armor I have is really good, I made the accessory a bit worse, so it adds up to skill power 9 for both either way, right? 5-4, 5-4. The only base that matters is you do specifically want Wanderer's Clothes. Because this effect, the potency of received buff effects, is very strong, it also applies to the damage that you get from the tower effect. The tower gives 100% skill damage to fire attackers, and the armor increases that by 23%, so another 23% skill damage. So this is the best armor, and you absolutely want this. You do want all of the traits to be skill power. Magic damage isn't really going to cut it, because we're using Draken Elixirs for a lot of the floors, and so that those magic damage traits just won't have a significant effect when compared to all of the damage you're getting from Draken Elixirs. So you do really want all of this to be skill power 9, basically. You might be able to get away with more or less. I mean, you definitely can get away with more, you might be able to get away with a bit less, but floor 3 will be a little dicey. And then as far as the Memoria goes, just use whatever Memoria you have with 31% magic attack. If you don't have a 31% magic attack Memoria, there are SR options with 25%, such as this Totori one, which is your best option, or this one with Vayne, which is a little bit worse because it gives skill damage based on low HP. But yeah, there are SR options. It will make it a little bit harder because it lowers your damage. If you have Ryza, that's not going to be a problem, as she does much more damage than Resna. But, you know, you'll have to figure out what your account can do for damage on your own. But this is the setup that I recommend. And it is tower at the end of the day, especially if you're trying to tackle it with a really budget setup. You are going to need good gear, at least on your attackers. So you have 3 weeks to make skill power 9s if you don't already have them. They will serve you well for a long time or forever. You really should have these already if your account is near endgame, so there's not really much I can do there. And then lastly, we have Regina. Regina is in our flex spot. For floor 3 and 2, I used her as a breaker, So she is a defender, but I used her for stun damage. So as far as her gear went, I put magic stun gear, so magic stun 5, magic stun 5, and magic stun 5 on some breaker items. These look good, but they're not. These are just magic damage boosts, not magic stun damage boosts. So you don't need 9s here. You just need the 5s, and that's fine. And yeah, just having as much magic stun as possible on her will help a lot for floor 3 to stun the enemies, which is very important. I also gave her a continuation of that summer because she will be attacking weakness, so good stun damage boost there. For floor 1, however, I did build her as more of an attacker. I gave her full skill power gear, so it just depends on which floor, what you need to use her for. And with the team setup out of the way, let's go through the strategy for each floor. All right, fire tower, and we will start from floor 1. So floor 1 is a solo battle against just a single boss golem, and it receives increased damage from single target attacks and mostly deals physical damage. This is why Lent is good here as a defender. This fight is very straightforward. You just want to chip away at it for as long as possible, use items to get damage when you can, and you don't want to use Resna's burst because it receives reduced damage from attacks that target all enemies. You're better off using Resna's skill 2 when you can, and maybe using Regina's burst for damage when you can. But overall, you can take a long time on this fight with this setup because Lent is lowering the damage it does, Meru's healing everything up, and it's really no problem. You may need to try a couple of times, but as long as you just make sure to keep everyone topped off, you will get through it eventually, even with the fairly mediocre damage. As far as items go, for this fight, I used Alchemy Candy. The reason we use Alchemy Candy is because it's 25% more magic skill damage for 2 turns, and that applies to Regina as well. I used Regina as an attacker on this fight, whereas the Ebonyal will only apply to attackers, so Resna. So I did use Alchemy Candy, and then I also used 2 golden extract soups just for good crits, so I didn't have to retry a bunch. Depending on your damage, you can do 1 soup, you can do 3 soups, you know, it's really whatever. And if you have Ryza, just use Ryza over Regina for this floor. And on any of these floors, if you have Mari, you can use Mari over Marion. Both of those characters will be quite a bit stronger, but this party absolutely will work. I one-shot the floor with this setup. And there's not really too much to know about it, so. For floor 2, we have 3 enemies this time. An armor, a Puni, and a fairy. What I ended up doing was stunning the fairy with Regina and Marion, and then just bursting with Resna with 2 Dragon Elixirs and a Golden Extract Soup. The Golden Extract Soup is for crit rate, and hopefully you have critical finish on your Dragon Elixirs as well. I highly recommend trying to make Dragon Elixirs with as much critical finish as possible, because it makes everything in tower much easier. But basically, you just want to reset this until you can do a burst with Resna, and then hopefully another burst with Resna as well. You can use whatever sort of skill 1s or whatever you need to move the timeline around to get those bursts on Resna, and it's very possible to do, and you will see it if you watch the video of this as well, which, once again, all of the clears will be linked in the description. They won't be shown in this video, but they will be there for you to watch. But yeah, it might take you a few tries, but you get 2 Resna bursts and the entire floor just dies. So very, very straightforward. And then floor 3 is the hardest one out of them. And the reason this fight is hard is because all of the enemies, they receive reduced damage while not stunned, and they are difficult to stun. So basically, we don't have a fire breaker because we're not using Mari. So the enemies are even more difficult to stun. They have very high stun gauges, and you basically can't do damage to them at all while they're not stunned. Like, a Resna burst while they're not stunned will do like 2,000 damage as opposed to 170,000 damage when they are stunned. It's a huge difference. You basically can't kill them while they're not stunned. they also do a fairly significant amount of physical area damage to your entire party, so they're very dangerous. However, as long as you can remove one of the golems early on in the fight, the Lent and Meru combo can sustain against the turtle and another golem for a really long time. When I actually won the fight with that team, it was about turn 120, but the first golem died somewhere around turn 10. So, and it took a bunch of other turns to get these two down. But I was not in any danger the entire time. The entire party stayed alive. So really the difficulty of this fight is getting one golem down first, and it can be fairly difficult because of the high stun gauge. You really need to go all in on stun gear for Marion and Regina, and what I ended up doing was I reset for a timeline where, and it's fairly common, you'll get it a decent amount of the time, where basically you can attack with Resda right away, and then you can just go all in on one of the golems with everyone else, except for everyone that's not Resna and Marion, for their first turn you want to use skill 1. So you use skill 1 on Lent, Meru, and Regina, and if you have the right timeline, this will set it up so that you can get a burst on either Marion or Regina, and then also a burst on Resna on that first round before they attack, right? So you'll be able to do the extra stun damage from the burst on one of your breakers, and then you can use the triple dragon setup on Resna with good critical finish to hopefully get a crit on it and one-shot it or nearly one-shot it. If it doesn't quite die, you will get another turn with Regina before it comes out of stun, and hopefully Regina's skill 2 will be enough damage to finish it off. It just sort of depends. And this is the trickiest one because of this. You really do need to sort of min-max damage with this setup. It is very close. Resna's damage is a little low for this. If you have Ryza, it will be much easier. You just use Ryza instead of Resna, and she will very easily one-shot the golem once it's broken, and you can sustain against the turtle and the golem forever. But yeah, other than that, I think that's about it. The team is very resilient against these fights, using Lent's skill 2 to reduce damage for your entire team against the AoEs, and Meru with the healing traits heals for over 800 for your entire party, and you can just whittle them down eventually. It's not really that bad. It may take you a few tries, but you know, you absolutely will succeed, especially if you study the clears that I will once again link in the description. So yeah, I wish you all luck. I hope you all can get your tickets. Everyone should be able to put this team together. Hopefully you can put the gear together as well. And yeah, I hope this was helpful, and I believe in you all. So good luck, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.